one most important thing where people's link with the governance occurs at the grassroots level. We have 700,000 villages in India. So, India is a land of villages, right, and that means there are 700,000 village level governance structures. We call them panchayats. Panchayat means 5 people, panch means 5. So, what that means is that at the village level you have village committees. There are also elected committees, and those committees, those 5 wise men or women will decide as to how the benefits of the state policy in terms of education programs, health program, clean water, clean sanitation. So, these decisions have to be taken at the 3rd level, panchayat level, and there are elections which take place in panchayats. So, in many respects there is emergence of regional power, there is a sign of democratic maturity now. The more local one goes, the more power flows to the people, including for the minorities. So, the story is minorities do get benefit when the power transfers from a centralized system to the local system. The recent election in West Bengal, Muslim dominated the electoral process. Assam, the Muslim oriented party is the opposition party in Assam. In Kerala, the Muslim oriented party is part of the government. The home minister is a Muslim, the education minister is a Muslim, the industry minister is a Muslim oriented party. So, these are the virtuous example of how the Muslim community is becoming part of the growth story of India through the electoral process. However, Uttar Pradesh is the most recent example. This happened just 3 weeks ago. The Muslim played a big role in the current government formation, and this government is about 4 months old now. So, the Muslims dominantly participated in formation. So, they are there. High level of elected representatives as MLAs. MLA is a political representative at the state level. MP, member of parliament, is a political representative at the national level. So, this member of legislative assembly is, so the number of Muslims today in UP are the highest ever in the history of India. So, that means the Muslims are participating more and more in the electoral process, which did not happen until very recently. But the most positive reporting to be done is the panchayat election, the grassroots level elections, where the Muslim proportion is almost double the share of population. Let me explain this a little. So, what are we talking about? We are talking about the deprivation of the Muslim community can be judged from the fact that you go to public spaces. A public space is a school, a public space is a bank, a public space is a university, all right. So, generally what Sachar committee showed is that when you go to public spaces, you see the proportion of the Muslim community is less than their proportion in the population. Different states have different population shares. For example, Kerala has 30% Muslim population, Bengal has 30% Muslim population, Assam has 35% Muslim population, whereas Odisha has only 5% Muslim population. So, if we go and say do an assessment, we expect then in Bengal in primary school the share of share of children going to school, if you take a census, then 30% of the Bengal children should be Muslims, right? It should reflect that, and then we see okay, there is an equity. But actually today only about 50% of the Muslim children are in school. So, the share in that population share in Bengal will not be more than 15%. So, there is a 15% deficit. Now, similar situation happened in the political scene, but now during these elections what we found out is in UP the share in population of Muslims is about 19%, say 20%. So, we expect that 20% of the elected representatives in the panchayat should be Muslims, right? Now, there are 35% of them are elected in 2 weeks ago. So, what this is happening is one can interpret this both positively and also one can interpret this a little bit negatively, and that is my worry, and that is where I conclude, is in a democracy we have to think about the leadership, a political leader who doesn't carry the baggage of any particular identity. For example, people say, always used to say, the condition of Muslims in India is low because there are no leaders of Muslim leaders in India. So, in quotes, Muslim leaders. Now, as an analyst, an economist and an analyst of the social issues, I would argue, why do you want Muslim leaders to solve the problem of Muslims in India in a democracy? For me, as I understand the democratic values, an elected representative, even if he is a Muslim, is not the leader of only Muslims. He is a representative of all community people around. Now, similarly, as a Muslim, I should not be looking for a Muslim name as my leader. I should be looking for a right principled person as my leader. It does not matter what religion or caste that person belongs to. That is the ultimate democratic value that I want to see, right? But in certain ways, what is happening here is that there is a relatively more participation. This is a good thing which is happening, because more and more Muslims are participating in the democratic process, and through that they are integrating into the development story. But should we aim for that kind of participation on community identity base? So, this is all identity based integration. I know you have a comment to make on that. This is my thesis, is in democracy people should integrate, but not ultimately look for community based integration. It should be that integration should happen on very different value, democratic value propositions. So, going back to, yeah. So, no, I had one more. Yeah. So, the whole question of leadership and democracy, we need to understand that very well. So, we do not want a kind of leadership emerging based on communal lines in India. But at the moment, it appears to me that there is a kind of sensitivity of the Muslim community, particularly after the Sachar committee report, and Muslims are coming together somewhat on communal lines, and then they are voting their own type, so is it good or bad? I do not know. I mean, it looks good to me, but in the long term, I do not want the polarization, communal polarization in the electoral process, because ultimately in democracy, it does not matter what caste and religion are. When you become a leader, you are a leader for the whole community, whole people. So, that is the concept which so, in that sense, in democracy, however, the leadership cannot be defined in terms of social and religious identities. So, with that, basically my last slide, but I just want to very quickly show you a bit of diversity of ideas are very important in a society like India. Now, there is the Muslim community has certain very unique attributes such as artisanship skills, quality and cost effectiveness, punctuality, timeliness, trust and security. These are some of the attributes of the Muslim community which are very important for nation building. There are social and cultural interactions create some new value systems which are very important for building up national worth, and we can identify universal principles for integrating the minority communities in the mainstream. And here is the action plan, and here is what is called Young Turks. So, we use the word Young Turks for a highly positive group of people, who come out into the public life without promoting the so-called the identity. These are the new leaders, and for that we call them Young Turks. So, when you say Young Turks and take the names in the past, there are no Muslim names, all right. So, but we use the word Young Turk for the newly emerging political leadership, newly emerging economic leadership in India. So, we call them the Young Turks. There are various other issues there, social and community level interaction. We need to address the slums, we need community work, we need anti-dowry programs, a number of things, interfaith work, we need interfaith dialogue, we need to celebrate national events, we need to make that as a culture, as a habit to celebrate national events, we need to express solidarity, and there is a integration, internal integration. Then we need to identify and cherish the cultural values of different communities. And I just want to leave this. I believe that we in India are losing out by not translating very important cultural literature, which is how we can communicate to each other as communities. Because our country is based on multiple languages. So, we need to translate some very important literature from one language to another, so that culturally we get integrated in India. I hope that I tried to give. It is very difficult to bring a huge canvas of issues and topics in a very short time. If I have confused you, I think it was not intentional, but that confusion will trigger you more to do some more Googling, some more referencing, or maybe you will call me again for a longer, more organized and more pointed seminar in future. I will be willing to come here any number of times you want to, in the same city or any other city. If you want to know more about the growth story of India, I can do my bit in future. Thank you very much for providing this opportunity. I am really feeling very proud that I got this opportunity to speak with you. Thank you. For the 5 years since the Sachar committee, once the committee report was submitted, it was given to the parliament. So, all the parliamentarians had an opportunity to go through it, and the Prime Minister and the cabinet is a smaller group of policymakers within the parliament, they accepted the report and the recommendation fully. So, often what happens is the committee report, sometimes if the government does not want to accept it, it will say we will accept only part of it, they will identify the page numbers or the chapters, but in this case they accepted the report as a whole, including its recommendations. So, we had fairly broad based recommendations, and the framework within which we do the recommendations was that when the Muslim community or the minority communities are deprived, the way to overcome that deprivation is to bring them to the same platform where the other community people are. Okay? So, if children are not going to school in as many number, we want to bring them back to the same school where the other community children are going, right. So, that is the kind of broad based policy making. Now, for example, if the Muslim community needed finance to build up their businesses, so we recommended that they should go to the normal banking system in India, right. However, the response of the government was slightly mean. For example, to improve the education of the Muslim community, the government would accept demands from certain corners, certain groups of Muslim community for madrasas. Okay. So, there is a broad based demand we made that the children should go to the normal regular schools, they have to sit along with other Hindu, Christian and other community people and go to the same school, and they should study the same language, whether it is English or Hindi. But the government's response for that was to create or promote certain kind of madrasas, all right. That does not mean they were not doing the other thing. So, they were doing it, but the focus was more on creating a special window, if you want to say so. Okay. Now, for the sake of accessing credit and development fund, we recommended, and there is a chapter in such a committee report where full chapter on banking structure, and then we said the neighborhood bank should accept the applications for loans and development loans, but instead the government would say we will establish, they had already established what is called the Minority Development Corporation as a separate window, and they had given some money over there. So, somehow the government's response to the Sachar committee report was not based on the philosophy and the value of integration of Muslim community into the mainstream. So, it was more to address the demands of specific lobby groups or specific power centers, which evolved from the Muslim community, but they were trying to look the electoral and other equations in mind, and they were trying to satisfy certain power groups. And because of that, what we found 5 years down the line is we have not seen major improvement. We see policies look very good, scholarship program for the Muslim community, madrasa modernization program for the Muslim community, but not the mass enrollment program of the Muslim community across India. We have not seen that policy. Okay. We have seen that increase more money for the Minority Development Corporation. The more money is 100,000 crores to another 500, 1,000 crores to another 500, 1,500 crore more money. Okay. But actually they should be part and parcel of the mainstream credit program under the main banking structure, where there is a mind boggling amount of money. There is more than $500 billion worth of money is there for the minority communities to go and dip into. So, the government will not bring a policy to bring sensitivity to make the deprived communities to go to the mainstream bank and access credit. So, government has not done that. Rather, government has said, okay, we will increase the capital share into the Minority Development Corporation, which has produced no economic value to anybody, including the government or to the minority community. So, there is a mismatch between what the recommendations of government were from the committee report and what government is doing. So, a report. And so here, I can take a couple of time to US India Policy Institute. So if you go to US India Policy Institute, you can download a report which USIPI have brought it, and that is, and this is the Sachar committee report. You can download them also, but there is one report. You go down, please, a little. No, you go to the main page. Yeah. Go down here. Go down. So click on that one. So this report is a kind of a preliminary review of what happened after Sachar committee since last 5 years. Please go.
I have a comment to make. I have a question here. It's fine you made a recommendation of the policy that the Muslim children should also have equal schooling in India with other communities. But as a Muslim community itself, are they progressive? Are they open-minded to it? Because most of the time what I see is they want to go to the schools where Islam is taught and not Christianity, because most of the schools in India are Christian-based schools. So, maybe, okay.
Okay. Those are the urban schools.
Yeah. So some of the good schools there are Christian-based. And you think the Muslim community would be okay with their children being taught in a Christian school where Islam is not even touched? So how is this policy really being helpful? Because
thank you. What's your name? Mamta. Very nice question. And right in this room, we have 3 boys here. He studied in neighborhood school college, and Rashid studied, and I studied in the neighborhood college, right? We didn't have problem, and Muslim community has the same ambitions and aspiration like anybody else today. It is only the provisioning, Muslims live in separate groups around their mosques. Sometimes in the name of security, they want to live in a cluster. So what is happening is, instead of the public program going to that cluster, in the same format it has gone to our Hindu neighbor. It has not gone there. They are giving a different format. And that is what we as intellectuals, we have to fight against it. It is a right of the Muslims to have religious education, but they will build up their own madrasas. And that happens in Kerala, for example. In Kerala, every Muslim child goes to a madrasa, every child. In fact, and at the same time, on the same day, they go to their school along with others, right? Now, in UP, that doesn't happen. In UP, what happens is the madrasas are purely madrasas where no modern education is given. Now, government wants to promote or meddle with that system instead of providing a neighborhood school. So, the recommendation of the Sachar committee is, so actually this was exactly told when I argued this with the, not with the Prime Minister but the group. Then I said, why don't you put a school there? So he would say, we can go and put up the school, but no Muslim child will go, the problem which you showed. So then the answer was, you have to locate the school, you have to man it with a teacher, and you have to give couple of years to see that slowly the children drift from that school to this school, because they know the job opportunities are there. They know that they are going to integrate with the world as a whole through that school rather than this school. So you have to give them opportunity. If you don't give them opportunity and say, no, this is what Muslim community need, and I feel that's an unfair comment on the Muslim community. Thank you. India is a highly diverse population, and India is, we Indians live in a large number of villages and towns and cities. Now, each village is a microcosm of India. There are multiple castes and multiple communities live in villages, for example, and they have their own areas in which they live. And then the public services such as a school or a dispensary or a hospital or an agriculture development program, those information comes to a central place. Now what happens is, by and large, because of the electoral politics, the majority groups control those resources. Now the resources come from far off places such as the national and the state governments. When they reach, they have to be distributed among the households. And often what happens is that if the people who control the village council, they distribute that information primarily to their own type of people. So that means some communities will be left out, and this happens every year. The Dalit community often gets left out, the Muslim community often gets left out, and there are a few places where Christians live. Because they are not numerous enough to be part of the panchayat system, they may be left out. So one of the most essential policy of government should be to bring the communities on one platform, not necessarily entirely through electoral system, because through the electoral system only those who have more numbers will get elected and they control the resources. But there should be other opportunities where communities, different communities are brought, for example, a cultural event. Now, in India, the cultural events, they are based on the caste and community focus. So within Hindus, there are different numerous events which happen, which are done only by one community, not the other community. So one of the mechanisms through which we can bring most of the communities into common platform is to bring a nationalism and celebrate the national event, not as a school event or not as an event in a government office, but as an event for the whole community. Now, so we need to find out these mechanisms, and in my presentation in the end, I had given a number of slides, if you go through, how to promote interfaith work and inter-community work at the grassroots level, which will bring people together. For example, the very fact that we need to address the environmental issue can be a common ground to bring all people into force. For example, how to protect the water bodies from pollution within the micro area. Now, no, we don't have such kind of discussions and debates at the moment going on in India. So we need to promote that kind of value system. The very fact that it is named Niagara, so what comes to my mind is the volume and so much of water falling from the river into another river at the different level. So what comes to me is a kind of overwhelming concept to me. You know, it looks to me that Niagara Foundation is all inclusive. It wants to take all people along with it in that volume, like Niagara, right? So I like the name Niagara Foundation. And I think the mission Niagara Foundation is excellent, and I think there is a special focus on education, I guess. And I think education is the key for the future growth of all countries, whether it is Turkey or even United States. You know, for example, there is a huge reskilling program in United States. Up to about 1/3 of unemployment in United States is because, not because you are not educated, because you are not educated in a particular type or particular skill. So I guess Niagara Foundation is looking into these issues. And in a country like India, we know that the Turkish civil society is undertaking a substantial investment in schools, including primary schools. I know that Turkish foundations are running primary schools in some states in India. I think these activities have to increase, and I wish that the Turkish education schemes can be taken over to all parts of India, and Indian government is very receptive to these policies. So I hope Niagara Foundation will expand its link to a country like India as well.